So, good morning, guys. Hope I'm audible to you. We are here for our Saturday workshop with Mr. Johnston, and today we are going to learn a lot about home studio tips and tricks, where most of you guys and the entire world right now is in a situation where things have come down to smaller spaces, home studios, and like that. So idea is to get some knowledge for us to have uh, like a proper understanding of how we can pull things off at home with minimal amount of understanding, and what exactly should be the process to do that. Most of you guys are producers, most of you guys are programmers working from home, making songs at home, and for your recording and mixing. So uh, we have Mr. Johnston, who would I would like him to let's start begin with this workshop.
Hi guys, thank you Mohit. Thank you for the introduction. So yeah, we'll be talking about a home studio setup. So this is absolutely a very basic thing that we'll be talking about. So before we start, I'd just like to know how many of you guys are new to the field of audio, and how many of you guys are like know something about this to begin with. You can quickly put in a chat so that we just have an idea of what we are. I mean, so that I quickly have an idea of how to go ahead with this thing. So basically, this is going to be absolutely very basic. So for those guys who already know about audio, it will be some added information. For those who are new to this, you'll get a basic idea of how things work in the home studio. Okay, so cool. Let's begin. So what exactly is a home studio? Home studio is nothing but uh, it's it's basically a small setup that's made in your from the comfort of your home. Okay, so here you'll have basically it can be a slightly elaborate setup with maybe some studio monitors and a little bigger interface with a computer and a microphone, or it can be even simple one microphone with a computer with a pair of headphones and a very simple audio interface. All right, so it does not need to be very elaborate. It can be absolutely simple. It can be just enough to make sure that your work gets done. Okay, so that is a home studio setup. The reason why we call it a home studio, because it is built for specifically for your purpose, in a place where it is comfortable for you guys to work in. All right, if you have doubts here, you can just quickly put in a chat. Either Mohit or I will uh, answer to it. If you are not understanding something, you can ask me questions and I can repeat stuff again. If I'm going too fast, can tell me I'm going fast and I can slow it down for you guys. All right. Okay, so now why a home studio? I mean, especially in a time like this when we cannot actually move out of the house and go to a big studio facility, having a small home studio setup kind of at least gets us going with whatever job that has to be done. So home studios usually are flexible because they are built in your house, so you can work with them at any time. If you feel that you want to work at 2 in the morning, you can get up and work at 2 in the morning. Okay, so it is flexible. The investments in these studios are generally very low compared to a large format studio, because all you need is maybe you need a computer, you need an interface, and you need a microphone and a pair of headphones if you don't have monitors. Now, for those guys who do not know what an interface is, what a headphone, what headphone does, and what a microphone would do, you need an interface basically to connect your microphone to your computer. Your microphone would not directly connect to your computer because the cables are different, and you would need something to convert the analog signal from the microphone to a digital data that the computer would understand. Okay, so you would a simple interface, a microphone, pair of headphones, and a computer. That's all you would require to begin your studio with. You don't need to have anything elaborate. You don't need to have some outboard gear. You don't need to have like a proper soundproof room and stuff like that. So that's why the studio investments are generally lower when it comes to home studio. Okay, and one main thing is this can be customized to what you require. So You can choose the kind of interface you want. You can choose the kind of microphone you want. You can choose a DAW that suits your purposes. By DAW, I mean the software that we record on, the software that we record, edit, and mix on. You can choose the plugins that you like. So it's all pretty much customized to what you require. Your workflow can be set, and it can be personalized to whatever you require. So these are the few these are three main things in a home studio setup. Okay, it's flexible, investments are relatively low, and it is customized to whatever you guys would require. Okay, if uh, if you are working in your home studio, does not mean that I can come and work there, because that setup, that whole workflow might be customized to your needs. Okay, as long as it fits your needs, your work can be done neatly, quickly, and in time. We are good to go with a home studio, right? Now let's go and check out what are the absolute basic requirements that we would need to have a home studio running. Okay, so you would require a relatively quiet room. Now, why I say relatively quiet room is because usually when we go to a studio, if you any of you guys have seen a studio, they're soundproofed, and there's some acoustic treatment done, and it sounds perfect and stuff like that. Now that's a big facility. They have all the space and the money to kind of get that facility ready specifically to do audio. But when you're working at home, the home environment is of course built for you to stay in. The studio environment is the home studio they built in has to be kind of altered that your space in your the altered to the space that you're living in. So if you have a relatively quiet room, it'll work for you. Why? Because if you're recording any voices or any instruments, and you're in a house which is facing the road, and you have a lot of traffic, or you have a lot of surrounding noise, that might not be very favorable for your recording. So a relatively quiet room would work really well. You need absolutely basic furniture, your table, your chair, something that you can work comfortably on. Computer, you would need a decently powerful computer. Doesn't matter if it's Mac or Windows, both work perfectly well. As long as the RAM has sufficient power, you can pretty much work on any DAW of your choice. Apart from Logic, if you're a guy who works on Logic, Logic will work only on Mac. Okay, most of the other DAWs that I know of, everything runs on both on Windows and on Mac. An audio interface, as I said earlier, you will require some sort of an audio interface where you can connect a microphone to, and your microphone can then feed all the signal into the computer, and you would need to listen to whatever audio your computer is playing back, so that that can be played via the interface into your headphones or onto your speakers. You would require a DAW. DAW stands for Digital Audio Workstation. Okay, that is the software that you will use to record and to edit and to mix. So it can be anything: Logic, Ableton, Reaper, Pro Tools. Any of these will work. All the DAWs do the same job. It all depends upon you as the end user to choose what suits best for you. You would require at least one microphone if you're into doing voiceovers, if you're into doing any sort of instrumental recording and stuff. You would require at least one microphone. You would require a decent quality headphones or studio monitors. If you cannot afford studio monitors, it's fine, you can still work off some decent quality headphones. And last is you'll need some cables and some stands that will connect your microphone and can hold your microphone up, and cables to connect your speakers or your microphone to the interface and back. All right, so these are the basic requirements that you would need to have a home studio up and running. All right, let's talk of the brain of your home studio right now. That's going to be your computer. Now there's a lot of debate, that is Mac is better or PC is better. Honestly speaking, both of them work absolutely well, as long as you have a decent amount, as long as you have decent amount of RAM. Because the if you have a very high spec RAM, that will kind of help you have fewer glitches when you're recording or when you're mixing. Having external storage, or even a large amount of internal storage, helps, because generally the sessions that you work on end up being fairly large, because you will be maybe recording an entire band, or you're mixing some music that a band has sent you, or you're mixing some voiceovers that multiple, or you're mixing a podcast, you're mixing something that has video in it. So you'll require a decent amount of hardware storage. So if you don't have enough of internal hardware storage, it's good to have some external hardware storage. I mean, you can have it on a hard disk if you like. And the last thing that a computer requires is good ventilation. Now most of us take this for granted because we think that a computer, if it has a good quality RAM and a lot of space and stuff, it works really well. The thing is, if your computer does not have enough of ventilation and if it is running too hot, it can kind of create issues while you're working, no matter how high spec your computer is. All right. So it's always good to keep your, if you're working on a laptop, to keep the laptop on a hard surface and not on any fabric or soft surface, because what happens is there's a lot of dust that kind of gathers on the fabric or on the soft surface that you keep your laptop on. Laptop has a fan inside which kind of helps the air ventilate through the machine. So when the fan is on, it tends to pull in all the dust from the fabric, or if you have kept, especially if you have kept your laptop on a sofa or on a bed or any sort of thick fabric, it pulls in all the dust and that kind of chokes up the fan. And in over prolonged periods of time, the fan, there'll be a lot of dust that accumulates in the fan, then you'll have to go for servicing, or even the fan can fail if you do not pay attention to that. So if your laptop is running hot, just make sure you check your hardware. Okay, so it is to keep your computer in optimum working condition, it's best to keep it well ventilated. If you have an AC in the room, great. If you do not have, make sure that you're not covering your laptop or desktop vents, because when you are working with audio, you're generally working with a lot of files. You're working for long periods of time. You're sit at one time, maybe you'll have like a 8 hour session, maybe, though you'll be taking breaks. So computer is probably going to be on for 7 to 8 hours, so you want to make sure that it works in the best possible conditions. All right. If you guys have any doubts, you can quickly write in the chat and we'll clear those doubts for you. Clear? Okay. The next thing is, hold on, let me open the chat. Yeah, let me look at some chats. Okay, so now is this clear? The computer clear? If you have any doubts regarding the computer, like what do you want to, what should be the optimum, what should be the best possible specifications? If you want to know, I can answer that. And whether you want to use PC or Mac, that is your own choice. If you're using Logic, again, if you're using Logic Pro is owned by Apple, so it works only on Mac. It would not work on PC. Pretty much every other software I know of works on both Mac and PC. There are few softwares which even work on Linux. Okay, so we'll talk more about the softwares when we come to the DAW part of things. For now, let's go ahead. Okay, so audio interfaces. Now, this audio interface that you see on the screen is basically the audio interface that I use at home. This very interface. Now, this interface is 10 years old. I bought this in, I think, 2009 or 2010. So the reason why I'm telling you this is because you do not need to have something really high spec for you to get your job done. So what is the basic use of an audio interface? Okay, it what it does, it converts your analog signal. A microphone will capture analog signal. Okay, so when we speak, for example, now I'm speaking into a microphone, and your condenser microphone. There are a couple of more microphones, but let's not get into that. So the difference between dynamic and condenser is basically their working principle. Okay, the condenser microphone has a different working principle, and the dynamic microphone has a different working principle. We'll get into that once we get to the microphones part of it. So once your microphone captures this audio, it converts this air pressure into analog voltage, okay, into electrical voltage. That voltage is then sent into the interface. Now we all know computers are digital, right? Computers do not understand anything when it comes to analog audio. Computers are uh, completely digital, so they will require digital data. So what your audio interface will do is it will take this analog voltage and it will convert it into digital data, which the computer now can record and recognize. Okay, that's what your interface does. Then what it does, it also takes the digital data coming out of a computer and converts it back into analog and sends it to your headphones or to your speakers. Okay, that's the main job of your audio interface. So your audio interface will have a bunch of preamps, will have maybe some it'll have a volume level, it'll have a headphone amplifier which will power up your headphones, it might have some MIDI in and out, and it'll have a protocol that connects it to the computer. So in most cases, the cheaper ones come with USB, which works perfectly. Now the one that you see on the screen is basically a USB powered interface. Okay, the moment I connect the USB cable from the interface to the computer, the computer gets its power, and it also sends audio, analog audio from the microphone to the computer, and takes audio from the computer back, sends it to the speakers. Okay, the device that you see in the screen is a two input and two output. Now what does a two input two output means? It means that at one time I can record two simultaneous inputs, and I can monitor two simultaneous outputs. Okay, so on this device, if I say wanted to record a guitar and a vocal, I could do that because it has two microphone preamps. I can connect two microphones to it, and I can send at the same time two channels of audio into the computer, and I can play back also two channels of audio coming back from the computer. That's the most simple professional audio interface that you'll find, and for most cases this will get your job done. You do not need to go and invest in an audio interface that is extremely expensive and very high spec. Okay, an audio interface like this, a market price, you will get a very good interface at about 12 to 15,000 rupees. You can find an interface which has two inputs, two outputs, and one headphone amplifier. Okay, so you do not need to break the bank to buy a very expensive audio interface. Of course, if you want expensive stuff, it is always available, but the idea here is to kind of have a budget setup that you can either set up at your home, or even put in your bag and take it to any remote location to work in. Okay, there's a question here. Okay, the question is like, someone said here that he has two headphone sorry, he has an audio interface which has two outputs. Can he listen to two headphones at the same time? Okay, now two outputs means that what your computer generally will send, once you're mixing, you'll be like, if you have say recorded some 15 tracks, okay, you will mix those 15 tracks down to two tracks that we call stereo, like a left channel and a right channel. That's what your computer will send back out. Okay, so that's what we mean by two outputs. If you want to run two headphones separately, you will need to have two headphone amplifiers on your interface. Now, for example, on this interface, if you see, there is, on the front you'll see the big knob, and beside the big knob you'll see a bunch of smaller knobs. So the one on the extreme right, the smallest knob on the extreme right, is my headphone amplifier. Okay, so on this interface I can connect only one headphone. If I needed to connect another headphone, I would have to either use a splitter or maybe have another headphone amplifier on the interface. So two channels of audio and two headphone amplifiers are completely two different things. So in most of the audio interfaces, you'll be able to connect only one headphone. If you want to connect two headphones, then you will have to spend a little more money and buy an audio interface that has two headphone outputs. So I hope that answers that question. Okay, so a two input and two output audio interface is recommended because generally in audio we like if you want to say record a synthesizer, or you want to record say something out from a guitar processor, and you want to take a stereo out from a guitar processor and you want to connect that, so it is good to always have two separate inputs, so that uh, if you want, you can record one at a time, or you can record two separate devices together, or two separate microphones, or two outputs coming from a keyboard or a processor, and record them in a stereo fashion into your computer. So that's why I recommend to have two inputs and two outputs. Okay, how much does the interface cost today? An interface would cost you anyway, I mean, if you can find really cheap ones for events, 7 to 8 thousand rupees. Okay, but a decent good quality one would come somewhere around maybe 12 to 15,000 rupees. This Avid one I think is discontinued. This is a very old interface. This is, I bought this in 2010, so I don't think you find it anymore. Another thing you need to keep in mind when you're buying these interfaces is that how much of a life it'll have. Okay, when you buy it, because generally any company will give it a life of about 7 to 10 years, because that's they'll keep on updating softwares for about 10 years. After 10 years, they'll stop updating softwares. Okay, so then you might, if you buy a really old model, then you might have problems with the drivers not working and stuff like that. So when you're buying, you just kind of check out which year is the manufacturer, and for how long you'll get the software update for it. So now companies like Focusrite have Scarlett, Presonus have some great sound cards. You have Audient that makes some great sound cards. So these all are, in the range of 12 to 18,000 rupees. You'll get two and two outputs. If you want more inputs and outputs, you'll have to spend a little more money on it. Okay. Another thing you need to look out for when you're buying an audio interface is something called as the bitrate and sample rate. Okay, I'll explain to you what bitrate and sample rate is in the next slide. But for now, just understand this, that most of your modern recordings, it is very common to record at 24 bits and 48 kilohertz or above. Okay, that's you can kind of assume that this is pretty much the standard right now. So 48 kilohertz, 24 bits. So if you buy an audio interface, you just make sure that it can support 24-bit 48 kilohertz. Generally, most of your audio interfaces in the market now can go up to 96 kilohertz, so that should not be a problem. Very rare cases, if you're buying a huge sound card or you're working off an old sound card, you might need to check this. Because if you're doing audio for any movie, or you're doing audio for streaming, in the sense like for Netflix or for Amazon Prime, or you want to stream it on your iTunes and stuff like that, it is always good to keep it at 48. Because then if iTunes wants, it can drop down the sample rate and stream at 44.1 also if they require to. But like mostly for any movie purposes, 48 kilohertz is generally used, so it's safe to keep like take a sound card that can support 48 kilohertz. But having said that, most of your sound cards will support everything from 44.1 16-bit right up to 96k 24-bit, uh, in the price range of 12,000 to 18,000 rupees. Okay, any other doubts with interfaces? Does anyone still want to? Any thoughts on the Moto M2? Well, the specifications on the Moto M2 are really good. It has got some good converters. You just need to get the latest drivers for it, because apparently the older drivers had some issues regarding the audio kind of having dropouts. But I think the latest drivers are good. So in all, the M2 and the M4 are great interfaces for the money. A Moto M2 will cost you around I think 17,000 rupees now. Yeah. Any other doubts you need to ask me? What does 48 kilohertz sample rate mean? Yes, I'll explain what is 48 kilohertz in the next slide. Just hold on to the question. I'll come to that 48 kilohertz and 24-bit in just like few minutes. Okay, so let's go to microphones now. Now in your home studio, you don't need. Okay, hold on. What about the Focusrite 2i2? Focusrite 2i2 is great. I mean, it's a budget interface and it'll just get the job done for you. SSL new interface also is good. I mean, apparently the preamps are really good of the interface. So I've not used the SSL, but from what I've heard, the preamps are really good. Okay, coming to microphones now. Microphones, as I said, we have different kinds of microphones, but the ones that we'll be dealing with today is two kinds of microphones. One is a dynamic microphone, one is a condenser microphone. Now they both have slightly different working principles. The condenser microphone has a very thin membrane, all right, a gold-plated membrane that is used to convert the sound pressure level into voltage. On the other hand, a dynamic microphone basically is a construction of a magnet and a coil, a copper coil around it. It's basically like a miniature speaker but wired the other way around. Okay, so let's not go into the construction part of it. I'm going to straight tell you which microphone is going to suit your needs and how do you pick out a good microphone for yourself. Okay, now let's talk about dynamic microphones first. Dynamic microphones usually are much cheaper to buy compared to condenser microphones. So you'll get like an SM50 that you see on the slide here is will cost you around I think 7 to 8,000 rupees depending upon the place you buy it from, and it'll last you a lifetime. I mean, there are SM58s which have lasted people 20 to 25 years. So quality wise, they're great. Because now the thing is, they are very sturdy. So even if you happen to drop them, if you, I mean, something happens to them. I mean, if you drop it, if literally, I mean, SM58s have survived accidents, like proper truck accidents have, and after the accident, the SM58s have survived that. So they are very strong microphones. They're relatively cheaper. They're easy to handle. The downside of a dynamic microphone is because it consists of a magnet and a voice coil on it. The high frequency detail on a dynamic microphone is slightly less compared to a condenser microphone. Okay, so but having said that, does not mean that a dynamic microphone is bad. Okay, in many places you would want to use a dynamic instead of a condenser. Number one reason being that they're very strong and they can take in very very loud sound. So you can put in a dynamic microphone in front of a kick drum, in front of a snare drum, and there will be no issues with the amount of loud sound you give it. Secondly, because they are a little less sensitive, if you're in a noisy environment, they kind of will can act as a they'll take environmental sounds less in, and it'll mostly concentrate on what you give directly in front of the microphone. Unlike a condenser microphone, condenser microphones are uh, very sensitive. So they're sensitive to high frequency. That's the reason why the high frequency detail in a condenser microphone is pristine. But at the same time, if you're having a room that has a lot of reverb in it, or you're having a lot of ambient sound, a condenser microphone might not be a good choice. So for a home studio, I always suggest that people go and buy a dynamic microphone because it's easy to use. Okay, they're strong, and they will reject a lot of your environmental sounds. So if you have maybe a little bit of traffic or a little bit of outdoor sounds coming in, like you can have, if you're in a place where there are a lot of trees, you'll have a lot of birds in the trees, and when those birds start chirping, you might get all the stuff in the microphone. So if having a dynamic microphone will reduce the possibility of getting those unwanted sounds onto your recording. If you are in an environment that is relatively quiet and you're sure that you're not going to have a lot of disturbance from outside, you can go in for a condenser microphone. Now the thing with the condenser microphone is it requires power to run, in the sense that it requires something called as phantom power, which is supplied from your audio interface. You will have a phantom power button on your audio interface which you can switch on, and it will power up the condenser microphone. Now condenser microphones generally are a little bit more brittle compared to dynamic microphones, so you have to handle them with care. You cannot leave them in environments which have a lot of moisture, because if the moisture sits on the diaphragm inside, it starts giving noise and stuff like that. So with the condenser microphone, you need to be a little more careful. But the thing is, with condenser microphones, you get better high quality, high frequency detail. Overall, high frequency and low frequency detail is much more better in a condenser microphone. Now it completely depends upon what are you going to use these microphones for. Okay, so if you're say recording maybe an acoustic guitar or a classical guitar, maybe you might want to go for a condenser microphone. But if you're just doing a voiceover or even recording vocals, you can do very well with a dynamic microphone as well. Okay, so some questions. U2 vocals use SM58. Yes. uh, yes, a good quality vocal recording can be, of course, someone has asked me if a good quality recording can be done with a budget microphone like an Audio Technica 2020 or something. You can get really good quality even with the SM58 if you know what you're doing with it. Okay, so you don't really need to spend a lot of money to get good quality. I'm not saying that you should not invest in expensive microphones and all. They are in a league of their own. But considering you're working at home and you have a very tiny setup, you can get very good results even with an SM58 if you know how to use it properly. So as long as you buy a microphone from a reputed company, they no brand makes bad microphones. And in today's age and time, no one makes bad quality products. Everyone makes good quality products. It's up to you exactly what you want to buy, what is your budget, and what are you going to use that microphone for. So you can start off with an SM58. I'm honestly telling you, like if you buy an SM57 58, you can pretty much do whatever you want with it. You can even mic guitars if you want with it. I mean, if you mic the guitar in the right place, you'll get a decent sound that you can work with. Okay. So again, these microphones will start in maybe 7-8 thousand rupees, and they can go on to a lakhs of rupees. So there's no limit to the price at what you can spend on microphones. So you have to, when you're buying a microphone, just be a little careful and be sure of what you want to do exactly with it. Okay, so if you're a guy who's only recording vocals or who's doing voiceovers, you can buy a dynamic microphone. I mean, there are, if you want like a cheaper microphone, there is SM58. There AKG makes some good microphones. You can also go in for, if you have the budget to go for a little more expensive microphones, there is the MD421 by Sennheiser. There is the SM7B by Shure, which is around a 25 to 30,000 range. If you are a guy who's recording maybe a lot of classical guitars at home, maybe a sitar at home, and if you're living in an environment which is s- relatively quiet, you can go in for a condenser microphone. So you can go in for the Rode. You can go in for the Lewitt microphones, the one that is on the screen here. This Lewitt microphones comes for about 12,000 rupees. SE Electronic makes some great microphones. You can go in for those also. How is the Rode M2? I'm not sure. I'm not used the Rode M2 yet, so I can't comment on that. But in general, Rode is a great company which makes some good microphones, so you can uh, I mean, you can depend on it, no problem. I have a Rode microphone, I think the NT one, which is more than 15 years old, still works great, and I'm still using it. So quality wise, they're great, and they give you good results. So no problem with that. Yeah, if as mentioned on the slide, if you are in an environment which is slightly noisy, maybe your house or your bedroom is facing the street, and you have a lot of sound coming in from the street, you could go in for a dynamic microphone. I would highly suggest then you go for the dynamic microphone, because that will kind of reject off axis sounds better than a condenser microphone. So that will give you a fairly isolated recordings. Okay. Using a pop filter. Now pop filter is basically what happens is, like, when we are speaking, there are certain syllables or certain words that have sounds of p's and b's in it. So when we are when those are called plosives. So you might have heard these popping sounds in vocals sometimes, which are kind of undesirable. So you can avoid that by using a pop filter. Now pop filter, what you see in the center of the two microphones is something. A pop filter is nothing but a very thin membrane that kind of does not let the extra explosive sounds from my mouth go onto the microphone, so it kind of gives you a clean recording. So I would highly recommend that you use a pop filter. You can get pop filter right from 600 rupees they start with, and you can go on to like 3000 rupees also. But you can work well. I mean, if you buy a pop filter which is about 1000 rupees, double mesh pop filter, it'll get your job done. Okay, any thoughts on the Aston Origin? Aston Origin, though I have not used it personally, but I have heard very good reviews about it. From what I've heard, I think it has a little bit of a high frequency boost on it. So off the bat, it sounds really good. Yes, you can use Rode NT1A in a home setup, no problem at all. I think the Rode NT1A has yeah, it is a Cartier polar pattern microphone, so you can use it at home, no problem at all. AKG, both 120 and 220 are great. The 120 is slightly cheaper than the 220. It has sharp highs. Yes, AKG, generally any Harman products have a little bit of a high frequency boost. But if you're recording vocals, say you're recording vocals for a band or for a very dense mix, that little high frequency boost can help you. If you think it's a lot, then you can always EQ it down. So you can take care of it. It's not something that will really spoil your recording. Yes, even the Aston is slightly brighter in response. The reason why they make these microphones brighter in response is basically they're looking at a market that is generally recording at home and recording vocals. So when you're mixing, we tend to kind of push the high frequencies of a vocal slightly. So instead of you doing it in your EQ, the company does it on the microphone and gives it to you. If it is too much for you, you can always get it down by doing some EQ and uh, taming those frequencies. So that should not be a problem. Yes, you're right. The high frequencies help for the air in the vocals. Correct. Okay. Any other doubts you have about microphones? If you want, if you already own something and you're confused about, if you maybe read the manual and you're confused about things, you can ask, and we'll try and clear those doubts for you. Everything okay so far? Is you guys are understanding what I'm speaking to you? Okay. So don't need to really spend a lot on this microphones and stuff. You can get very good quality results with uh, with minimalistic money spent on these microphones. So what you need to really work on is your art of performing. Okay, don't really worry about the gear as much. With a budget of, excluding the laptop or the computer, with a budget of 25 to 30,000 rupees, you can get your entire home studio setup, including a good quality headphones, microphone stand, cables, and your interface. Okay, so that is possible, not a problem at all. Of course, once you add the computer in it, then the price goes up slightly. Okay, now let's come to the DAW. So time like live chal raha. So okay, let's come to the DAW. Now the thing is, DAWs generally happen to become the big topic of debate amongst people who are starting to do audio. Let me tell you one thing: any DAW you choose, the job done by this DAW is absolutely the same. Okay, you will get the similar tools to work with. They all are great quality DAWs, and you don't need to worry. Choosing a DAW is your personal choice. So if you're starting out in audio and you're confused as to what to use, what not to use, what you can do is you can go and try out a bunch of DAWs. Now, almost all the brands give you a demo version. You can download this demo version. use it for a few days or for a week or 2 weeks and try it out, see how it relates to you, and then decide as to what DAW is going to be the going to be your choice, and you're going to use it for the rest of your career. So all of them do the same job. The choice is subjective because like I am a guy who's been using Pro Tools for the last 8-10 years, so I find it easier to use Pro Tools than to use any other software, but that's my personal choice. Doesn't mean that Pro Tools is better than any other DAW. Some people use Logic, some people use Studio One. It is all fine, all of them do the same job. It's all upon you, depends upon what your budget is, what you want to do with it, and how you want to use it. It depends upon you. So like for example, Studio One has a feature wherein you can make your own shortcuts. For I think even Logic has that feature. So there are some features which are different from each other, but in most cases all the DAWs are equally good in my opinion. So you have DAWs like Logic, Studio One, Reaper, um, Ableton, Pro Tools. It all depends upon you. Whatever you feel is comfortable for you, you can go and choose and start using it. If you want to try out Pro Tools, Pro Tools is something called as Pro Tools First, which is available free. It gives you an option of using 16 audio tracks, 16 aux tracks, and 16 MIDI tracks, which is kind of more than enough for you to try it out, do stuff on. So you can. The only downside is that you need the internet for it to work. But if you want to try out Pro Tools, that's a good way of trying out Pro Tools. If you want to try out, like Ableton and stuff like that, you can get free versions like Ableton Lite and all to use. So once you are comfortable with one software, then you can choose. Maybe you can go and buy it then. I would highly recommend buying a DAW. I mean, but if you want to maybe just learn and try out stuff, you can try out with the freeware. Okay. So maybe its few features might be a little bit of a change from one DAW to another, but they do the same job. And I've heard a lot of people debating about whether one DAW sounds better than the other. That is not the case. It is just a tool for you to work. It does not add or subtract anything from your audio, depending upon what plugins you use. Maybe if you use some specific tone shaping plugin, then of course the sound will change. But otherwise, if you use just the simple DAW, we play a track from one DAW without any processing and play another DAW with the same track without any processing, they will sound identical. Okay. Can we import video and sync it in Studio One? Yes, you can do it. I don't know the exact way of doing it, but you can do it. Pretty much all your DAWs support at least one channel of video. Okay. Any doubts about DAWs? You can quickly ask, and I can probably try and uh, clear them out for you. Can we same thing can be done because I've tried and it didn't. Ableton, I'm not really sure. I'm sure you can do it, but there could be maybe you need to maybe download some sort of an extension for it. But I don't. I think you can do it in Ableton as well. I'm not an Ableton user, so I can't comment on that. But as far as I know, most of your DAWs allow you to use at least one track of audio. Okay. Okay. Let's get into monitoring. Now, what is monitoring? Now, okay, when we talk about monitoring in audio, it is not your screen. Okay, for a layman, monitoring, maybe they might think about a computer screen or some sort of a screen. When we talk about monitoring, is we are talking about our speakers or our studio monitors or our studio speakers. Okay, because we are going to monitor whatever audio is being played back from the computer using either headphones or studio monitors. So that is what we call monitors. So we either call them studio monitors. That means we are referring to speakers, studio speakers, or monitoring headphones means we are referring to headphones that are kind of that we are listening to the audio from. Okay. Now when you're, if at all you are in the market to buy speakers for your house or for your room, you consider the space that you have to work with. Okay. If you, I mean, most average size bedrooms can work with a speaker that has a 5-inch woofer. Now what I mean by woofer is a low frequency speaker or in your cabinet is called the woofer. Okay. It's the mostly it's usually the speaker that is visible from the outside. Now they come in different sizes. You find 3 inches, you want 5 inches, you find 8 inches, 7 inches. So in most cases, if you have a small room, a 5-inch speaker will get the job done for you. If you have a fairly larger room, maybe then you want to go in for an 8-inch. But in most cases, 5-inch does the job really well. Okay. So again, monitor speakers. Nowadays, you don't need to spend a lot of money. Maybe you can get a pair of studio monitors from 35,000 rupees. You can get a decent pair of studio monitors. Okay. So if you do not have money for pair of studio monitors, you can go in for a good quality headphone. Okay, nowadays you get really great quality headphones for a relatively small price. Headphones usually come in two types. They're open back and closed back. Now open back headphones is, now if you see the headphone that I am wearing, it's a closed back headphone, means it is completely closed from the outside. But open back headphone will be it will have a mesh on the outside, so basically you can hear whatever I'm listening to, that sound spills out. Generally open back headphones, they sound a little bit more natural compared to closed back. Having said that, closed back headphones, you get some really good closed back headphones. You have the Audio Technica M50, you have the Bear Dynamic DT770. They're great headphones and you can use them for mixing as well. Audio Technica has another pair of headphones called the ATH M40X, and I mean, as far as specs go, it's quite a flat sounding headphone, and it's a great headphone for the price. It's, I think, cost around 8,000 9,000 rupees, and I mean, you can pretty much start your career with that headphone. If you do not have money for that, you can probably go in for the ATH M20 as well, which is slightly more cheaper. But if you're going in for a headphone for your home use, I would suggest you should keep around 7 to 9,000 rupees as a budget. So you'll find a good Sennheiser MD 280, sorry, HD 280 in it. You might find a Audio Technica M40. So these are some brands which I have tried out and are quite good. Okay, again, you don't need to spend a lot of money. Yes, if you want to buy pro grade stuff, then maybe you might have to keep like 15 or 16 grand plus as a budget. But if you're working in a home studio and you're recording vocals or something, I would suggest that you go in for a closed back headphone, because you don't want, if you're recording vocals and having an open back headphone, then what's going to happen is the whatever you're listening to, whatever you're monitoring is going to spill back out and go into the microphone, which is not desired. So if you're going to record vocals, if you're doing a lot of recording in a home studio, I would suggest go for a closed back headphone. Don't go for an open back headphone. Okay. Uh, yes. Now, if you're using speakers at home, as far as much as possible, try and get the tweeter. The tweeter are the smaller speakers that you can see the smaller drivers that you can see on a pair of things. So I'm going to just put up a pic of a workstation quickly. So on this picture here, you see the monitors there. The ones that the white colored speaker that you see is basically the woofer. This is an 8-inch speaker. Okay, and if you see here, if you guys can see, okay, it's not clear in the pic. Usually your monitor speaker will have a small driver, like a 2 inch or a 1 inch driver, and then you might have a 5-inch bigger driver. So the bigger driver is for playing the low frequency and the smaller drivers for playing the higher frequencies. Okay, so try to get the higher frequency driver to come at least some as much as possible in line with your ears, so that, because high frequencies are generally very directional, so you want them to hit your ears as much as possible directly and not hit them indirectly. So as much as possible, try and get your speakers to a ear position if possible. If not possible, because it's a home studio, you might have to do some compromise, but then if it is possible, and raise the monitors till your ear level. Okay, now coming to something that everybody should take care of is the amount of time you spend listening to the work that you're doing. Okay, if you're mixing or recording or whatever you're doing on speakers or on headphones, give yourself breaks, because human hearing changes as you keep exposing it to louder sounds. So if you're exposed to loud sounds for prolonged period of time, your perception of hearing is going to change. Okay, so maybe every 20 minutes, every 40 minutes, it's good to kind of take a 5 minute or a 7 minute breather, so that you can relax your ears and come back to working. Especially if you're mixing, try not to listen to music or anything at very very loud volumes, because that can give you permanent or temporary or permanent hearing damage, which is of course not good for your career. So keep your volumes manageable. Don't push it too loud. Sometimes, yes, if you're mixing, you want to check how things sound at a louder level, you can push it up, check it, and make sure that you come back to a level which is comfortable for you to work in. The softer levels you listen to, the more you can work. If you're listening to louder levels, what is going to happen is you're going to get tired very fast. Okay, so it's good to kind of keep your volumes at a very manageable level, so that you can work for longer periods of time. And if you decide to work for long periods of time, make sure that you give yourself breaks. At least 5 minutes break every 45 minutes should be a good start. Okay, some questions. Any good headphones around 20K? Yes, open back headphones around 20K. You'll find the DT 990 Pro. That is, I think, around 15,000. Well, I think it's about 14 or 15,000. They're good headphones. AKG 712. I mean, any AKG product, in my opinion, is slightly bright. That's the reason why I don't prefer AKG headphones. But it's up to you. I mean, if it is possible, try and hear those headphones. Go to a store and see if you can actually demo those headphones. It's always good to have some experience with the headphones before, I mean, instead of going and buying it just by looking at reviews. So if it is possible, if your friends own a pair of headphones, you just go and try it out. And if there's no way of trying it out, then I would suggest that go in for a cheaper headphone so that you know what you're dealing with. And even if you don't like it, that means you have not spent a lot of money on it at least. Okay. So if you are just getting into the field and you want to invest into headphones and stuff, I would not recommend buying expensive headphones. Buy something like a AKG M40, which is Audio Technica M40, which is around 7 to 8 thousand rupees, which is a great headphone. It will last you a long time. Then if you want to upgrade, it's up to you. uh Necessary that we treat the room. Okay, room treatment. See what happens. Okay, now room treatment is very subjective. If you know that there are some inherent problems in your room, then you can go in for treating. But like my bedroom studio is not treated at all. What happens in your house is that you have furniture lying around, and that kind of randomizes the reflections. So even if you treat it, you won't get the best results out of it. Yes, if you're in an empty room which has very less furniture and stuff, then treatment would be a good option. But if you're in a room which has already a lot of furniture in it, then treating may I mean it is I'm not sure if the treatment will actually make the quality of the sound better. So I think a good way to kind of deal with that is get yourself a pair of good headphones that you can depend on. Get used to the headphones, understand how things sound on those headphones. So even if you're mixing on monitors, you put those headphones on, and once you feel that it sounds great on those headphones, that means you can be sure that once you take that particular mix outside, it will translate well. So that's a drawback with a home studio, because you're not working in perfect acoustic environments. There could be issues, but over time, once you get used to your space, you'll find you'll find it that working in a home studio becomes much more easier once you get used to the space. Okay, hold on. Next is, so yeah, acoustic treatment, again, as I said, not necessary, but if you're sure about it, you can go for it. But in most cases, it won't be necessary. Yes, if you're working in an empty room, like you do not have any furniture in it, then you should go in for some sort of acoustic treatment. Good quality monitors around 12,000 rupees. I won't suggest that you buy monitors of 12,000 rupees, because they won't you won't get any good quality monitors around 12,000 rupees. You rather buy a good quality headphone. So if you have around 12,000 rupees to spend on your monitoring, I would suggest you go in for like an M50, or maybe a DT 770, or if you spend maybe 2,000 rupees more, 14,000 rupees, you'll get a DT 990 in that. But remember, the DT 990 and the 770 come in different impedance packages. So I suggest you go in for the lower impedance one, because those will work on any sound card. So go in for the 32 ohms ones, which will kind of work on any sound card, even work on a phone. Recommend headphone for mixing. I personally use the DT 990 Pro, which are great, but they are slightly expensive. They come at about 14,000 rupees. But if you want to use, you can use the 80H M40. I used to use the M50s, but M50 are slightly, they have a little bit extra low frequencies in them, which the M40 does not, which is kind of good. I have never used the 880. So I've used this. I checked out the 770 DT 770, and the 770s are great. In my opinion, 770s are slightly bright, but if you get used to it, it's a good headphone. It's a good, and the best thing about the DT 770 is they have very good isolation. So once you, even though they are not active noise cancellation, if you are in a noisy environment and you want to work, they'll provide you very good isolation, so that you'll be able to hear your audio very very clearly. So that's a good thing about the DT 770s, and they're great tracking headphones, by the way. You won't have spilling, you won't have leakage from of the audio from the headphones into the microphone, because they provide good isolation. But I think, in my opinion, if you want to go for a headphone, I think the Sennheiser HD 280, and the AKG, sorry, the not the AKG, the ATH M40X. They both come around 7 to 9,000 rupees, and they're both great headphones, and they will last you a lifetime. You can use them for a good 7 8 years, no problem. Okay. Okay, here are a couple of headphones. Now the headphones that you see here are the, I think, the ATH M40 and the DT990. The DT990C is an open back. You see that you can see through the housing, whereas the ATH is closed back. Okay, a simple example of how you would want to set up your home studio. Now it depends upon how much space you have, but as much as possible, try to stay away from walls. Of course, you'll have to be close to one wall, but just try to make sure that you're away of the other wall. But it's okay if you cannot, if you do not have the perfect space to set your setup in. As long as you have a comfortable enough space, just make do with it. And if you're using headphones, honestly, the room acoustics won't matter at all. So unless you're using monitors, the room acoustics obviously will matter. But if you're using headphones, room acoustics won't matter as much. Okay. Okay, let's come to workstation now. Now I'm sure like most of you guys might have gone on YouTube and checked out these people who have fancy, home studios, and they have a lot of outboard gear, and they have fancy microphones, and like lava lamps and all that. You don't require all of this stuff to get your job done. As I said, that to get your job done, you need a good computer, decent pair of headphones, one interface, and maybe monitors. That's all you require. Okay, so keep your workstation simple. Don't clutter it up. Don't put stuff that you do not require. If you are if you're a guitarist or something, maybe then you might want to have some guitar gear around. But if uh, do not simply at all go and buy stuff when you're not going to use it. Okay, just because you've seen that, maybe you might have seen some of your friends or some YouTube guy who has, like, outboard preamps and whatnot. Just don't go and invest in it. You invest in that things when you actually require it. Okay, if you have a decent, even a Focusrite Scarlett 2i2 and a SM58 and a good pair of headphones, you can get your job done. Okay, it all depends upon your ears are the main thing that you need to concentrate on. If your ears are good and you can work with audio in the best way possible, you get good results. Okay, so try and keep it simple. Do not have to rely on any outboard gear to get your job done, because nowadays most of your even DAWs give you very good plugins to work with. If you don't need to go and buy plugins from Waves or from Universal Audio, they are expensive. You can take Pro Tools or Logic, and all of them give you all the basic tools to get good quality audio output from it. In fact, Logic and Ableton will have some really great plugins that you can work with, and you would not really need to use any third party plugin with that. Okay, another thing which I highly recommend is, if you have your home studio, try and keep things connected. Avoid having to connect things over and over again. For example, if you're sure that you're going to record vocals for the most part of it, try and make sure that you get a stand, connect the vocal mic, and keep it ready, so that when you get an idea, you're not going looking for your microphone and connecting it and then looking for a cable and stuff. So if everything is connected and kept, all you need to do is start your computer, start your software, and you can start working. So as much as possible, try your MIDI controller, make sure it's connected and kept. If you have a microphone, if you have space in the house, just connect and keep it. Don't disconnect and try to move things around very often, because if you get an idea, you want to make sure that things are ready for you to work in. And try and keep things a little neat, so that you don't trip and fall. And I have had friends who have broken really expensive microphones because they just have made a mess in their room of cables. So try and keep things a little neater, so that you are safe and your equipment is safe. Okay, which monitors would I recommend for mixing? Someone has asked me that question. I mean, there are a lot of monitors available at different prices. Honestly, it's your personal choice. Okay, I am not a guy who prefers one monitor over the other. If I have personally, I have the HS80s at home, which I've gotten very used to. So, but I can mix on pretty much anything. I'll have to just get used to the system. Once I'm used to it, I can mix on anything. So there is, the monitoring will depend upon your where you're going to install those monitors, and will depend upon very, very highly upon your budget, because monitors are slightly expensive compared to headphones and stuff like that. Okay, I do not recommend buying very cheap monitors. Buy something that is, because once you invest in a pair of monitors, you want to use them for a long time. So make sure they're of good quality, and then they last you a long time. Okay. So any other questions regarding your setup, regarding DAWs, regarding microphones? you know Interfaces, you'll find interface nowadays, you'll find even Thunderbolt interfaces, by the way, for using on Macs and stuff like that, which are great. Now you'll most of the interfaces coming out nowadays are USB 2.0, but they are have the USB-C connect on it. Can I use a regular 2.1 system? No, I don't suggest using a 2.1 home theater system, because those are very highly colored, and they are EQ to, maybe some of them have a lot of top end, some of them have a lot of low end, especially a lot of these home theater system will have excess amount of low end. So I don't suggest that you use a home theater system. You invest in a good pair of headphones. Kali Audio I've not used. I think Mohit has a pair of Kali Audios, so he'll be the best guy for reviews on those speakers. Can you mention some good monitors get started for a home studio setup? As I said, home studio setup, you would like, I mean, stick to a 5-inch monitor. If you really want to, you want some brands, the HS5 Yamaha is good. You can go for, I think, I don't know if you get the MSP7. Again, Yamaha MSP7 is also a great monitor to start with. There's another brand called Monkey Bananas, which is also quite nice actually. They're a little bit colored, but they're good. There's KRK. I personally am not a very big fan of KRK, but yes, you can find KRKs as well, 5-inch. They're pretty okay. So yeah, if you want some brands. How do you deal with moisture and weather conditions, maintaining microphones in particular? If it is a condenser microphone, I pack it up. I do not keep it outside. If I'm not using it, I pack it up and I keep silica gel with the microphone in the bag. So that's how I deal with microphones. Always use the pop filter when using a condenser microphone, because if you do not use a pop filter, tiny droplets of saliva will go on and fall onto the onto the capsule. So over time it can get spoiled. So if you're using a condenser microphone, it's a good idea to always keep a pop filter in front of it. Although I have treated the room, I still feel interference. See, the interface pot start giving noise means the interface pot is getting spoiled. What you can do is you get something called as a contact cleaner, electrical contact cleaner. Okay, there I think you'll get it on Amazon for around 450 500 rupees. What you could do is you could take your covering out of the pot and just spray that contact cleaner. So if there's any dust and all that's there on the contacts, it'll kind of wash that dust away. So that can be a good fix. But in most cases, if your pots are noisy, that means the pot is getting spoiled. So it's time for you to either get it repaired or change your interface. But if you use the contact cleaner, you might need to you might be able to juice out some more life from that interface. uh, Adam audio monitors also are great, but Adam audio generally a little more expensive compared to like HS5 or something. So Adam audios are known for their ribbon tweeters, so that's the reason why they're slightly more expensive. And I think, as far as I know, they are biamped. So see, don't spend a lot of money on very high end gear. Try to get something that fits your pocket, at the same time gives you a decent result. So in my opinion, if you have to start a home studio, trust me, get a decent interface, one laptop, a good pair of headphones, and a decent microphone. You're sorted. You use that for 6 months, you'll get used to the setup, and you'll be able to do wonders with that. Concentrate on your training your ears instead of spending a lot on gear. Okay, once you start working professionally, then it's time for you to invest in maybe a decent monitoring system, and anything, and maybe a little more expensive microphone and stuff. KRK rocket 5s are, in my opinion, a little bit colored, but I mean, some people love them. So I'm not a very big fan, but you check them out. If you like them, they're the monitors for you. Do not go by, when it comes to brands and when it comes to speakers and headphones and all, everyone has a different take on it. So I would highly recommend that you go to a shop and listen to it, listen to multiple speakers, listen to multiple headphones, and then make a very informed decision. You might go and read a lot of stuff on on some forums. You might check out a lot of videos on YouTube and stuff, which is great, but there is nothing that beats personal experience. So I highly recommend, if you know a studio that has maybe the monitors that you like, go and check it out there. If you know a friend who has certain headphones that you like, go and check them out. So try and give yourself a personal experience first before you go and invest in it. Okay, take some time, but don't just because you have the money, don't go and jump and buy gear. Take some time, research for a long amount of time, and then go and make that decision, because any piece of gear that you buy, you want to use it for a long time. And when you want to use something for a long time, you have to make sure that you buy the gear that kind of really suits your needs. Okay. So let's go ahead, let's go with workflow. So this is about the gear part of things, like what you would require to run your studio. Any doubts here? Anything else that you want me to touch upon? I can touch upon that before we get into the actual uh, kind of working, recording, and kind of filing side of things. Okay, so let's go to the workflow now. What do you mean by workflow? Workflow means your protocol of working. You everyone has their own sweet way of working, so getting that set is very important. Okay, first thing first, which many people do not talk about, if you go on YouTube or go on whatever thing, many people won't talk about this, is how do you do your filing. What is filing? I mean, where do you save your files and in what order you save your files? That is very important. You make sure that whenever you start working in audio, or for that matter any professional field, that you start bifurcating your folders very very clearly. Like in my computer, I have a folder named projects, and I make sure whatever I have to do with audio, whenever I'm working on any project, all those files are stored in that one folder. Do not store your files on the desktop or random folders here and there. Make sure that anytime you open a file, if you're working on a movie, just take all the files, put them in one folder, name that folder, and keep it in your projects folder. Okay, so the next time when you want to look for it, you don't have to search your computer for it. You know exactly where that particular folder lies. Okay, and it becomes easier for you to look for files if they go missing. So always have a very strict filing protocol. Don't keep things on your desktop. Don't clutter your desktop up. Don't keep things on external hard drives. Whatever project you're working on, you make sure that project is on your computer. If you want to archive some projects, then you keep those projects on your hard drive. But as far as possible, any project that you're working on, keep it on your computer drive and work on it from your computer drive only. So whenever you're opening stuff, whenever you're closing stuff, you know exactly where your folder is kept. If something by mistake, some file gets deleted, some file gets is missing from your DW, you can always, where exactly to go and look for it. If you have, a lot of people have this habit of saving things on the desktop. Then what happens, your desktop gets all cluttered up, and then when you want to go and look for a particular file or folder, you can't find it because the desktop is absolutely cluttered. Okay, so don't do that. In your computer, in your drive, choose one particular, if you're running on a PC, choose any particular drive which has the most amount of space in it. Make a folder for your projects, and each and every project you're working on, name it properly, give it a very unique name. Okay, secondly, when you opening up your DAW and you're using multiple tracks, a lot of people have a habit of opening a new track and usko name nahi karte, and then they go ahead and start recording on it. Okay, so क्या होता है, वो track one करके नाम आता है, and then even on the audio file you'll have track one, and then you don't know, you'll have like 15 tracks, and then you don't know what is the kick, what is the snare, which is the guitar. You don't know anything because you've not named it. So whenever you open a track, make sure that you name that track. If you're opening a track to record vocals, lead vocals, name it lead vocals, lead vocal 1, backing vocal 2, whatever it is. Just make sure you name all your tracks. Be meticulous in that. It'll take you probably 5 minutes extra to do that work, but that extra 5 minutes is an investment, because later on when you start mixing and editing, those names will really make your workflow much much faster. Okay, so every track that you open in your on your DAW, make sure you name it. If you're opening a aux track to add reverb on it, name it. Okay, so give it unique names. It takes like 30 seconds to do that, so spend that 30 seconds and name your tracks. Why do you do that? Is because, say tomorrow if you're only recording at home and you want to give those tracks or give your session to another engineer to mix, and if you have not named your tracks, that guy is going to get confused. He'll have to basically listen to each and every track and hear what is playing, what is the kick, which is the snare, which is the bass guitar, and then he'll have to name it. You're wasting his time. So when you open a track, first name it and then start recording. Okay, in your studio, again, try and keep very few moving parts. What do I mean by moving parts? Is, again, like, if you're, as I said, if you're sure that, if you're a guitarist, if you're an electric guitarist and you play a lot of electric guitar, and you have your processor and you have a guitar, try and keep a space for your processor, try and keep a space for your guitar, so that every time you want to sit and work, you don't have to connect a guitar over and over again. Keep it all connected, so that when you want to work, you just open your computer, open your file, and you start working on it. So it kind of just helps you be more creative, rather than spend time working connecting stuff to your computer. You want to play the keyboard and then your MIDI controller not connected to it. You go look for the MIDI controller, then get it, then connect it, then figure out, oh, it's not working. No, you just keep everything connected as much as possible. Certain things like condenser microphones or your headphones, which can fall and break, you kind of pack it up in good places. But stuff like your interface, your MIDI controller, find spaces on your workstation where you can keep it fixed and don't move it. Simple. Yeah. And another thing is, on a DAW, it's very good to work with templates. Now, if you have a DAW, for example, now a digital audio works. So, for example, Pro Tools. Okay, when I work on Pro Tools, I have a entire template made. So, whatever master track that I require, all the reverbs I require, any plugins that I use, is all I make it as a template and save it. So every time I'm going to mix, all I have to do is import the template, and all what I want is already there. I save about 10 to 15 minutes of my time. Okay, so it's a good idea to work with templates. Sit, maybe one day sit and figure out how exactly you want to work and create a template. Okay, create a template, save it separately, and every DAW gives an option of making a template. So that kind of that once you start working on templates, trust me, you won't look back again. You know, it makes life very, very, very easy. Clear? So this is very simple tips on basically making your workflow faster and more effective, rather than spending time connecting stuff and dealing with unnamed files and files that have gone missing and stuff like that. So once you have a good saving protocol, once you have a good naming protocol, once you have everything connected, it'll just help you work faster and faster. It'll get you to your destination faster, basically. Any doubts here? Okay, now let's go to the recording bit of things. Okay, now comes the point where we'll deal with the sample rate and stuff like that, which I'll explain to you. As I said earlier, right, we work on 48 samples. So whenever you start recording, try and keep a standard. Like I have decided in my computer, everything I record on is going to be at 48 kilohertz. 48 kilohertz, 24-bit. So that, because what happens is, if by mistake those settings change, then you might spoil the session, corrupt the session, or corrupt the audio or something, and the audio starts playing at weird speeds and all that. You don't want that to happen. If you decide you have to work at 48, no matter what project comes in, you tell the client, I'm working at 48 samples, and you work with that, unless and until some special request comes in. Maybe someone wants to work in 96, then you change it and make sure you put it back to 48 once you're done with the session. Okay, now let me explain to you. Now, so for people who do not know what someone had asked me what is the sample rate and bit rate. So I'll give you a short explanation and try and do my best in explaining uh, what sample rate is. Okay, so you guys can see the piece of paper here. So first you need to understand what is sampling. Okay, now in digital audio, okay, what happens when, like as I said, when I speak, okay, I am basically creating sound pressure variations in air. Okay, those sound pressure variations are captured by the microphone. Okay, when the microphone captures those variations, it basically converts those sound pressure variations into a voltage. Okay, so once that voltage is basically a linear voltage, it flows pretty uh, fluently, and once it gets to the interface, it has to be converted into digital data. Now what happens, like for example, now you have a sine wave. Okay, this for example is your audio waveform. Can everybody see it? I think yes. Now this is your analog audio waveform. So when this goes into your interface, what your interface is going to do is going to take very small snapshots of this wave. It's going to start taking snapshots. It's like taking small photographs of this wave. Okay, so the number of snapshots your computer takes in a second is the sample rate. So when your computer is taking 40, when I say 48,000, when I say 48 kilohertz, that means it's taking 48,000 samples every second. Means from every analog audio wave, it is taking 48 snapshots of it in a second. Okay, so that means It's once, and once it goes, it will basically take 48 of the snapshots and then play the snapshots in the same, what you call it, uh, f- uh, in the same way back, and we can basically recreate the audio waveform. So that is a sample rate, the amount of snapshots your audio interface is going to take of that audio waveform in a second. So that is your sample rate. So if it is 44.1, means 44,100 100 snapshots in a second. That is 44,100 samples in a second. If it is 48, that means 48 kilohertz means 48,000 samples in a second. If it is 96, means 96,000 samples in a second. 96,000 snapshots it is taking off that particular audio waveform in 1 second. Okay, so of course, the more amount of snapshots you take, the larger the audio file gets, and you get more resolution in it basically. Okay, that is to do with your sample rate. Is this clear? At least you all got a basic idea of what sample rate is. If not, like, this is not, this is the most layperson explanation I can give of what sample rate is. Once you start your classes and stuff, you'll learn more in depth. But even for people who are not in audio, this is the most simple explanation I can give. It's basically your computer, your audio interface is taking 48,000 snapshots of that audio waveform and storing it as minute samples in your computer. And when it plays back all the samples in the same format that it recorded it in. Okay, now what is bitrate? Now when you're talking about bitrate, is basically, say we have 16 bits and 24 bits. Okay, now you might have seen, like, I'm going to open up a Pro Tools and kind of, hold on, let me open up Pro Tools to show you what exactly bitrate would look like. Okay, let me share the screen. And okay, all of y'all can see the Pro Tools screen. I guess you can see the Pro Tools screen. I'm just going to open a new master fader. Okay, now if you see this master fader, okay, on the right hand here, you're basically seeing this meter, right? It is minus 40 right up till 0 dB. This is called a full scale meter. Okay, now this session is on 24 bit, means from minus 40 till 0 dB, dBFS, dB full scale, it is divided into 24 segments. Okay, so what happens is, you know you know that digital data is all zeros and ones, right? So when you're saying 16 bit, means it's 16 zeros. Okay, so, and every combination from 16 zeros to 16 ones. Okay, that's the amount of combinations you have available to store your data in. So the higher amount of bit rate, the more amount of data that you have stored, the more higher resolution your audio is going to be. Okay, if you have a 16-bit recording, that means your minimum, your the headroom, the bandwidth you have is from infinity till 0 dBFS is going to be 16 bits. Okay, so what you need to take back from this is that the higher the bit rate, the better quality you get. Now the bit rate is standard. You get either 24 bit or 16 bit, and then you get 32 bit floating, which we are not going to get into. So I would recommend that you keep your bit rate at 24 and you keep your sample rate at 48. That way you get the best of both worlds. You get good resolution of audio, and you can also use this audio in film and stuff like that. For Blu-ray and stuff, it's all used at 24-bit 48 kilohertz. Okay, so remember, this bitrate is the amount of data you're storing in each sample. Okay, I'm not going to get into the technical side of things much, but just remember one thing, that when you're dealing with 24 bits, it's a higher resolution. 16 bits is a little lower resolution. CD quality is 44.1 and 16 bit, and DVD quality is usually DVD and Blu-ray is usually 48 kilohertz and 24 bit. Okay, do you all still require better explanation with bitrate and sample rate? I can try and give a better explanation, or this explanation I think is the most simplest thing I can give. And what I would ask you to do is, just, if even if you do not understand this completely, as a rule of thumb, try and record as much as possible in 24 bit and 48 kilohertz. Why 24 bit is because you'll have better resolution than 16 bit. Okay, you'll have much more, like you'll have much more better quality reverbs. You'll have higher detail in your audio system, in your audio recording, compared to a 16 bit recording. Okay, if you do not have space and for some reason you're fighting with space, and you can do a 44.1 kilohertz recording, but try and keep a 24 bit. But for most cases, I suggest that you keep 24 bit and 48 kilohertz. It'll be much simpler that way. Okay. uh, is that clear? Bitrate, sample rate, at least relatively clear for you guys, or you still need a better explanation for it? You can type in the chat and let me know. Yeah, so let's get back to our presentation. Okay, any doubts that you have, you all can ask me and I can try and clear them out for you. Okay, so far everything clear? Anything about microphones, DAWs? If you have any questions about Pro Tools, Logic, Ableton, I mean, not much of Ableton. I'm not a Ableton user, but Pro Tools, Logic, I can maybe answer your questions if you have any doubts about that. Okay, then let's go to our next slide. Okay. Uh, Once you're done with this, once you have set your sample rate and bit depth, the next thing you need to worry about is a buffer size. Okay. Now, while you're recording, you make sure that you keep your buffer size as low as possible. Now, what is this buffer size? It's basically how much amount of data you store in your RAM. Okay, so RAM is basically a temporary storage for all your data. Now, what does the RAM do? You imagine the RAM to be like a dam. Okay, it takes in some data, stores it for some amount of time, and then lets the data out in a very streamlined fashion, and lets a very consistent stream of data flowing out of the RAM goes into the DAW. So because the RAM stores the data for some amount of time to kind of regulate it, what happens is this ends up becoming a latency for you. Means, like, if I'm speaking into the microphone and I'm listening to the same recording after, I'm listening to myself through the DAW, you might notice that when you speak, you can hear your voice a few milliseconds later. That is why, because your voice is getting onto the microphone, going into the interface, and then it's going to the RAM, and the RAM is storing it for some time, and then a few milliseconds later it is giving it to the DAW, and that's when you can hear it. To avoid that from happening, you can reduce your buffer size. So usually, I think the lowest buffer size you can get is 32 samples, and the highest you can get is, I think, 1028. I think you can get even higher than that now. But when you're recording, try to keep it as low as possible. Usually, even with a computer with a 4 GB RAM, you should be able to run at around 64 bits, and you won't have any noticeable latency. Okay, now why is this latency a problem? Because when you're playing a guitar, or maybe when you're singing, or maybe when you're playing the keyboard, if you have a latency between what you physically play, and what you hear, it's going to throw you off timing. It is very annoying. So while recording, try and keep the buffer size low as possible. If you're working on a computer with a smaller RAM, then try not to use any plugins while recording, because the more plugins you use, the more RAM it requires to run everything smoothly. So avoid using any plugins while recording. If you're running on a computer which has maybe a 32 GB RAM, or maybe more than that, then maybe you could use some plugins and you won't have a problem as such. But usually in any case, when if you're running on a 4 GB RAM or 8 GB RAM, I would suggest that while you're recording, avoid using plugins. Maybe if you want to use some reverb and all, it's fine, but avoid using heavy duty plugins. Okay. Keep the buffer size low. Now where will you find this buffer size is usually in your preferences of your, or your setup of your DAW. So that's where you go and choose the thing. Now what it is, some DAW say buffer size, like Pro Tools calls it buffer size. uh, I think Logic and Studio One and all call it latency. So just keep that buffer size low and your latency will reduce. Okay. Now coming to a very very important thing while recording, something known as a gain structure. Now on any interface, you will notice there's something known as a gain knob. Okay. Now what is that gain? Is basically it's a preamplifier. Okay, when you speak into the microphone, you're supposed to increase the preamplifier. Now the thing is, if you record too hot, I mean if you're recording at very high levels, then what's going to happen? Remember I spoke to you about bit rate, right? We have everything from 000 to the power 16 till 111 16 ones. So what happens is, if you record at a very high level, there's a possibility that your analog to digital converter, the converter that converts your analog signal to digital data, that might start overdriving, and so all of a sudden it does not know what to do with a high level signal. It turns all the data into ones, and then the data distorts and you can hear a very distorted sound. You do not want to record a distorted sound, because you cannot, after recording you cannot do anything. It's that recording is ruined. Okay. So record at a level which is conservative. Now I'll tell you at what level to record. I mean, if you do not know anything about metering and stuff, it's fine. Very I'm going to give you a very simple way of figuring out at what level to record on. Okay, I'm going to share my Pro Tools screen again. I'm going to open up a new track. Okay, you all can see the screen. Now going to open up this meter. Now in Pro Tools, doesn't matter whether you're working in Pro Tools, Logic, Nuendo, whatever it is, it will have a meter that always has a zero right on top. Okay, can you all see that? On the meter on top, there's a zero there. So when you see a zero at the top of a meter, means that meter is a full scale meter. Okay, so whenever you're recording, you try and average your recording at about -20 to -18 on this full scale meter. Okay, are you understanding that? Is it clear, or you're still a little confused? Hold on, let me open up the chat.
Yeah.
Chat. Yeah. Okay, so try and get your audio to sit somewhere between -20 to -18 dBFS. Okay, for those people who don't know what dBFS, don't bother. It is basically decibel in full scale. Any digital audio workstation will have this meter. If you see on my screen right now, it is at 60 is the minimum, that is -60, and 0 is the maximum. Whenever you see something that has a 0 on top, that meter is a full scale meter. You check your audio on that full scale meter and then get it to average. Now there are two things. There's something called as peak and there's something called as average. Now average is where your audio will hover around. So get the audio to hover around -20 to -18. Now why do I say this? Why am I so specific about that? Is because if you plan to use any analog modeling plugins, for example, if you use some of those Wave SSL plugins and stuff like that, all those plugins are calibrated at -18 dBFS. Okay, so -18 dBFS is equal to 0 dB VU there. Okay, forget the calculation. Just keep in mind that whenever you're recording, try to get your audio to average around -20 -18. Okay, that will, once if you record like maybe even 50 tracks, it will still give you enough of headroom and you'll have a very pristine quality recording. And in post production, if you think of using some analog plugins and stuff on it, I mean some analog modeling plugins and all, you'll be hitting these plugins at the right level. Okay, so if you record very soft, then what's going to happen? You're going to reach somewhere very close to the noise floor. That means you will have a recording that might end up being slightly noisy or very soft, and if you try to boost the level in post, it might just sound really bad. So a good place to start your recording is -20 to -18 decibel in full scale. That is every meter that has a zero on the right on the top is your full scale meter. Means every other value is negative. Okay, keep that in mind. If you do not understand anything from this, just keep in mind that you look for the meter that has a zero on top and record somewhere around -20 or -18. Okay, that is a very I mean, this is what I tell my friends who do not know anything about audio and who are doing home recordings. So if they do it in that with that and give, it's great. Even if you record slightly louder, you can still deal with it, but just make sure that you do not clip, you do not hit that red light. If you're consistently hitting the red light, this red light is coming on, that means your audio is getting damaged and you cannot do anything to rectify it later on. Clear? No, LUFS is the loudness meter. LUFS is something different. This we are talking about DBFS. LUFS is for mastering and loudness. Okay, is that clear? Do you want me to give you another explanation for it, or you okay? I'm going to try and insert some audio into this. Okay. Okay, there's something wrong with the Pro Tools here, so it's not playing back audio. But I'm going to just mute this channel and let us see at what level this kick drum has been recorded. Can you see the screen, right? See, they have recorded at pretty much what you call it, a very uh, it should be hovering around -20. It's peaking at -20 right now because it's a kick drum. That's the reason why there is not going to be, it's going to be all transients. Let's take something like a bass guitar. Okay, let's get a bass guitar in and let's check that. You're all gonna see the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. Now if you check at what level they have recorded, it's somewhere around -18, -20. You see that? So this is where it is hovering. That's the peak. That little yellow line you see on top is the peak. So that peak can go higher, it's fine. But when your average level, try to keep it around -20, -18. So this particular recording that's been done is been done perfectly. Yeah. The meter shows peak or average. Generally, most of the meters will show you both peak and average. Like right now, what you're seeing on the screen, you see this, fluorescent green. That means it is uh, the meters usually are like dark green, fluorescent green, yellow, and red. So red is something that you need to be away from. The yellow is like okay, it's okay if you peak at yellow, but fluorescent green is where you want to be in. Okay, that's usually around -20, -18. Okay, now the reason why I'm not going much technical is because I might have people from who do not know anything about audio, so at least visually you have an idea of at what level you need to record. But only thing you need to be sure is that your the the meter you choose should be the full scale meter. That is, full scale means the zero has to be on the top, absolutely on top. It has to be zero. That's when you know you're in the full scale meter. Any doubts here? How do you set the level? It is basically by adjusting your gain knob. Okay, that's how you set your level. Okay, so let us get back to the presentation. So that is to do with your levels that you set. So, and this is the most important thing when you're doing a recording, because if you mess up this, if you record too soft or too loud, then it can be detrimental to the post production later on. Okay, just make sure that you do not clip your A to D converter while recording. If whenever you're seeing that you're hitting consistent red in your recording software, that means you need to back off the level slightly, not on the fader but on your preamp when you're recording. Any doubts? If anyone wants to get an explanation of what a preamp is and what a fader is, please ask. I will explain it to you. Why does a creeping sound in there in the DAW? Okay, I don't really understand what is a creeping sound, but it could be something to do with your. I mean, it could be as simple as a faulty cable, or it could be something to do with your buffer size. Usually, if Pro Tools has a buffer size problem, then it will stop. It won't work. But if you have that kind of a problem, it could be something to do with your cable or maybe your preamp that is faulty. I'm not really sure about it. I mean, I'm not understanding what is a creeping sound. what they're trying to explain basically. Yeah, but at least can you show us my mix template? Okay, I don't have my mix template on this computer here, but let me try and see if I can get something for you. Just hold on. My mix template would be, so I have a very simple just give me a second, let me go and open up the file. Okay, I don't have a mix template here, but I can quickly make a template and show you guys. I'll share my Pro Tools screen with you guys and we'll create a mix template right here. Okay, mix template is nothing but you just make sure that you have that you get all the stuff that you require, and you make a file, kind of a file, and you save it as a template. That's all. So some of your favorite plugins or some of your favorite workflow, you just save it that way, and you kind of what do you call it, make a, okay, just let me get everything up top. New share, and let's share my Pro Tools screen with you. Okay, now here is my, can you all see my Pro Tools screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So now, like, for example, now I have this, I'm not going to play the audio here because there's some issue with Pro Tools which is not, so I'm just going to mute everything.
So can
But
you zoom
yeah,
it out the window?
zoom out the window. Okay, I think it's complete. It's okay, hold on, I'll just, is that any better? Because it's fit to screen here right now.
Yes, sir. This
Yeah.
correct.
Okay, cool. So now, for example, I have this session that I would like to mix. Now, even before starting to do any fader changes, any editing, what I'll do is I'll try and see, I'll figure out what is my mix template. So usually what I do is uh, I'll create some aux tracks. I have a master track already, so I'll create a aux track, and say I'll create like 4 stereo aux tracks. Okay, then I'll name it. Maybe I'll name this drums. I'll name this guitars. I'll name this keyboards, and I'll name this vocals. Okay, so usually what I do is I send all the drums to one aux track, all the guitars to another aux track, and so on and so forth. Okay, what I can also do is, okay, hold on, let's do one thing. Let's get rid of these audio tracks. Okay, so now this is like something which I would work on. Now I think, okay, fine, I want to use like one reverb and one delay. Then I'll make another couple of aux tracks and name them one reverb, one delay. Okay, so now say this is thing, my master fader is done. Then I feel, what, I want to have a submix, so I'll make another aux track, create a submix. Now I'll explain to you why I have done what. Okay, and now I feel, okay, fine, I want to do some plugin processing on my, I have some favorite plugins, for example. Now let's see what is here. I have, say, uh, maybe I want to put some a channel strip here. I want to do some EQ on the master. Say I want to put a reverb. I'll choose a favorite reverb. I'll choose one deverb which I like. Uh, I'll choose a delay. Okay, let's choose this delay. Okay, so now say, for example, assume that this is the setup that I like using always. What I can also go and do is I can go and make a IO file here, and I can go and say, name the buses. For example, now I can name my bus 1 2 as my drums. I can make this as bass. Okay, I can make this keyboards. Now this is, I'm doing it on Pro Tools, but this thing is pretty much possible on any DAW. Okay, so it's not only unique to Pro Tools. You'll have to just figure out which DAW you're using and how to get it done on that particular DAW. And this is vocals. I'll make this my reverb and make this my delay. Okay, once that is done, all that is set, then I can say okay here, and then I can pre-assign everything. I'll assign this to input from the drums, input from the bass bus or whatever guitar bus, input from the keyboard bus, import from vocal bus, import from the reverb bus, and the delay bus. Okay, now I have created a submix. Okay, now most of you might be wondering what is the submix thing. What I generally do while mixing is I'll take all my tracks and I'll not send it to the master directly. I'll send it to the I'll make a separate auxiliary track and I'll send it there. And from there, that output I'll send to the master. Why? Because many of you all might not know this, but any insert point, like all these insert, right, where we add plugins in Pro Tools, and I think it's pretty much every DAW out there, that all the inserts on this master track are post fader. So if at all I add some compressor vagara here and I change the master level of this, it will change the input into the inserts also. So to avoid that, I make a submix, put all of the audio into the submix, do whatever plugins I want to do in the submix, and then send it finally to the master. Okay. So now anyway, this is my way of working. I've done this. Now what I feel, okay, this is something, then I'll save it. What I can do in Pro Tools is I can go to File and I can go and save this as a template, save as template. Then I can name this template whatever, my mix also, and whatever category, choose a category, save, whatever. I'll just choose a category and say okay. So now what has happened is Pro
About the
Tools.
routing,
Sorry.
I have a doubt about the routing about
Yeah.
this auxiliary tracks.
I'll show it to you. I'll just open another session and show it to you. Now just understand that, okay, fine. You have made this template. I have saved this as a template. Okay. How do you save a template? Open an empty session to make all your aux tracks, put all your plugins and everything, and go and save it as a template. Now once this template is saved, what I can do is now I can go and say open whatever session I want to. I'll go and open another session now. Okay. I'll open this session. Okay. Now this is a brand new session. Now you see whatever I've done is gone. So now say now instead of going and doing whatever previously what all this creating of the tracks and naming it and stuff, instead of doing it all over again, now all I need to do is go and import that template. So I'll basically say I'll import audio. So the shortcut, it is Shift Alt and I. Oh, sorry. Session data. Sorry. Import. I'll say import, and I'll say what do you call it? I'll say session data. I can do import session data, or I can do another thing. A very simple thing. I'll quit Pro Tools, and, and I'll do it all over again. Hold on. Okay, let me open up Pro Tools all over again, and I'll share the screen with you. Okay, Pro Tools is opening up now. When Pro Tools opens up, it should give me a dialog box. Okay, now when you have this dialog box open, I can basically choose create from a template. Okay, and now somewhere here I'll find my template there. My template is here, my mix. When I say this and create, it will basically open up my template Now that is open. Once this is open now, what I can do is I can just go and simply import all my audio into. You can't see the Pro Tools screen. Okay, hold on. New share. There you go. So once I said open from template, Pro Tools opened my template up. Now what I can do is I can straight away go and import my audio. Session data. I can go and say import audio, and whatever audio I want, I can import that audio. And I'll go to my file. Just hold on a second. Okay. Now it's Pro Tools is importing the audio. It'll take a minute to import the audio because there are a bunch of tracks. Okay, so now the thing is, like, I'll import the audio. My session is already ready. I don't have to go and make these aux tracks. I don't need to make the master track. Everything's ready. Once I import the audio, I just route my tracks to the right aux track, and I'm ready to go. Okay. Uh, See, stereo delay, mono delay is something which it's up to you. I mean, wherever you feel that you want something you want a slightly wider delay, you can use a stereo. If you want something to only play at one side of your uh, what do you call it, one side of your speakers or in the center, then you use a mono delay. That's completely an artistic choice that you make. Okay, so now I have all my tracks coming. Now what I can do is I can just basically decide all my drums. I choose my drums, percussion. Okay, till here I choose all my percussion and drums and send it to the drum bus. That is done. I choose my bass, my electric guitar, acoustic guitar 2, and electric guitar. Everything is done. That I basically go and send it to the that guitar bus which I made. Vocals and backing vocals I now send to the vocals. Now the thing is, here what happens is, imagine if I'm mixing 3 or 4 songs in a day. Every time I open up a new session, I have to again go and make a aux track, make my sub tracks, and make all of this stuff. It is just waste of time. Instead of that, if I have a template ready, I just open up a new session, import my template, import all the audio, just route it, and what work would take me 15-20 minutes will take me now 5 minutes to do. You guys got an idea of I mean, what a template can do? And these templates can become very complex. This is a very simple thing I'm talking about. The templates you can have plugins on them. You can have certain amount of, you can even have some, you know, you can change the routings. You can save separate. You can save specific routings. You can even save certain audio samples as templates. Okay, so working with templates will make your life much easier. Okay.
So I have a doubt about the routing of the auxiliary tracks which you made,
Okay.
like the
Right.
drum aux. So
Yeah.
the output of the drum and guitars and keyboards would be to the submix, right?
Yes, those submixes are
Or
basically, yeah, that is
anywhere?
exactly. No. So basically, what I'm doing, have you heard of audio groups? You know what your audio groups, right? So
Yes, sir.
yeah, what I've done is these aux tracks are my audio groups. So I made one stereo aux track for my drums, one stereo aux track for my bass guitar, for my keyboard, for my vocals. So instead of sending my drums directly to the master, I'm sending the drums first to the drum subgroup, and from the drums subgroup, I'm sending it to my submix, and my submix is then going to the master.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
That's what my question is.
yeah.
You said
Your voice is breaking. Hello. Good.
auxiliary track of the drums, right?
Yeah,
Hello.
yeah. Every drum track is
So
going
can
to.
you hear me?
Now I can hear you. Yeah.
So the every drum track you send into the auxiliary track of the drums, right?
Yes, exactly.
So the auxiliary tracks output is going to be in the submix.
Yes, exactly. So this output of the auxiliary track is now going to go to the submix, which I have not yet assigned it, but I'll choose see a submix. I'll just choose it here. So then I go
Okay,
to
sir.
and I go to my sub and I
That
make
was
sure that
my
the
question.
yeah. So then I make the sub. I'll take this. Yeah. So, but one thing when you make these submixes, right, you make sure you kind of disable the solo from here.
So, yeah, I can do it.
Yeah, always do that. Naito, what is going to happen is if at all you solo, if you solo your main track, you won't be able to hear the solo because your aux track has been soloed. Is basically aux track is not solo disabled. Okay, so I mean, but see, the point is not getting into the mixing. The point is just why do you make your template? It's just to make your life a little more easier and to save time. So, say suppose you're doing a voiceover. Okay, when you do a voiceover, you know that one particular plugin sounds really nice on your voice, and certain kind of EQ sounds good. You can make your own channel strip setting and keep it. So every time you're doing a voiceover with the same microphone with on your voice, you can just open your template and you're good to go instead of you know over and over again recreating that same EQ and pulling the same plugin in. You'll just save time. Okay, same with your guitars. If you know that a particular EQ works on a guitar, you save it as a template and you import the template, or you can save it as a preset on your plugin. Also, you can open a plugin and save a preset. So you can just sorry, this is automations. You can basically save a preset here. Just save the setting. So whatever setting you do, you can do whatever setting you want, and then you just go and say save setting and name it whatever. Name the setting. So the next time you want to, if I disable it from here now, I go and open the plugin, the same delay plugin. I can probably go and import setting. I can do, and it should be somewhere here, or I can go and just choose it from one of these presets here. So it should be somewhere. It should have been saved somewhere here. So it just makes a life a little more easier. When you start using templates and you save presets. Okay, is that clear? Let us go back to our. Okay, so once this is done, once you've recorded the right level, one thing you need to make sure that when you're recording is that you make sure that you record a satisfying performance, because if your performance is less than satisfying, you cannot go back and do it again. So unless you have a satisfying performance, you make sure that you repeat and try and do it till the time you're satisfied with it. Having said that, don't try to make sure that you don't overwork, especially when you're doing voiceovers, when you're doing vocals and all, because you have a very set limit. Once you cross that limit, your voice starts getting tired, then the recording will not be satisfactory anyway. So you have to keep these two things, maintain that balance, and pay attention when you're recording there. While you're recording, you make sure that there is no background noise. If you have a dog in the house, if you have some cleaning going on in your house, you make sure that you're not working during those times, because while recording, the last thing you want is some external noise to get recorded along with your recording. You don't want that to go to your client. Another big problem is when in the house, when you're using an AC. So whenever you're using an AC, you just make sure that you dial up a gain to where you're comfortable. Do a test recording. Check if you're getting any interference with the AC, if you're getting any of that AC noise in it. If you're not getting, great. If you're getting it, then unfortunately you have to switch the AC off. So these are things you need to keep in mind when you're recording. These are very simple things, but many times people forget to do it. Yeah. Any doubts here? Next important thing is when you go into doing edits. Now, I have a way of working. When I record, after recording, I go into editing stage. While I'm editing, I do not get into mixing anything. I am concentrating only on editing. Now, what is editing? Is I make sure, like if I go to my Pro Tools screen right now, uh, let me go to Pro Tools. I have some audio tracks here now. Okay, I make sure that all the ends are trimmed out properly. Any excess, you know, region at the end, I might go and want to trim all of it. So I'll maybe select all and trim it. Okay, I just check out in the beginning if there's any unwanted stuff in the beginning which is not required. I go and trim that. Okay, then if I want to edit something, maybe one of the snare hits is gone a little bad, one of the kick hits is gone a little bad, I want to go and replace those. Maybe then I'll go and take that, uh, say if I want to replace a kick hit, so I'll maybe copy that kick and copy it, and then go on whichever kick hit has gone bad, I go and replace it there. For example, this kick hit, if I say this kick hit has gone bad, then I go and replace it. Now, if you notice, I'm just going to make this a little bigger. Okay, if you notice now this, you'll see like this little mark here that says that okay, this region has been either copied or pasted here. When this sort of a thing happens, there's a possibility that you might have a click or a pop in the audio. So when you do this, make sure that you add a crossfade. Okay, you make sure that you add a crossfade. So in case if there is any abrupt cut in audio, the crossfade will sort it out for you. When you put a crossfade, you make sure you listen to it. Okay, don't blindly just go and putting crossfades and go ahead. Sometimes it so happens that the if the boundaries are not adjusted properly, then you might hear some pops, and you don't want those pops to go to your client, because then it just shows that you've done a very lousy job. So whenever you're doing any of this crossfading, any edits that you make sure that you go and listen to that edit there. Okay, spend a little time and make sure that your edits are clean. Do not have you should not, when you after doing the edit and when you listen to it, your edit should be invisible, it should not be audible at all. Okay, so any points where you're cutting, if you need to correct some timings, uh, what else do you do in editing? You basically, if you have taken multiple vocal takes and you have made and you want to comp all of it together, then you choose the right vocal take and then s- stitch it all together and make sure all the edit points are cross faded nicely, and then you get into your into your mixing phase. Okay, do not try to jumble everything up. If you're recording, do only recording. you know if you're editing, make sure that everything you're doing only editing and not adding plugins and trying to mix it and stuff, because then you'll just get confused and you'll start adding unnecessary load on your computer. So if you're sticking to editing, just edit first and then do whatever plugins and stuff you need to add. Okay, once you're sure all your editing is done, once everything's sorted, then you can either, if you want, you can consolidate all the files, or then you can start mixing directly, it's fine. Okay, uh, if you're editing stuff that has not been recorded by you, say some other engineer or some other friend of yours is recorded and I send it to you, you check the gain staging. How do you check the gain staging? Once you play the audio, open up a meter and check at what level it is averaging. If you think that it is too loud, then you can go and do something as clip gain. Now most of your DAWs get this clip gain feature. In Pro Tools, it is on the clip itself. This, I'm going to open up this bass section here.
Sir, does Logic provides clip gain? Like,
Yes,
where
Logic
is it
does provide clip gain.
provided?
A Logic clip gain, I think you can go into the automations and there it is there. I can't really remember Logic right now. Hold on. If I think I have Logic here. Let me see. I think Mohit is good with Logic, right? Mohit can tell you where the clip gain is in Logic, but it is there for sure.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So like Pro Tools has a clip gain, like at every region, at every clip, you'll see a small fader on the left hand side bottom. That's your clip gain in Pro Tools. You can reduce it, increase it. Like Nuendo, I think in the middle of the Nuendo, when you go in Nuendo or Cubase, when you select the file, it'll give you one square kind of a thing in the center on the top. You can pull that down. That is the clip gain in Nuendo. So you just, if you don't know where a clip gain is, just Google clip gain in so and so DAW and they'll tell you.
Yeah,
But
in Logic Pro X, should I say, Johnson?
yeah, go ahead, please.
In Logic Pro X, you'll find it on the top left corner in the region section, where whichever clip you have selected or region you've selected, you can change the gain of it from there. Top left corner.
Yeah. So how do you
Thank you.
set it up? Yeah, how do you set it up is, again, check your meter and may play the file. I'm just going to try and play this file. I'm not going to play the audio, but I'm just going to. So when the file plays, you check at what level it is. I mean, this is recorded perfectly, but if I thought it was too loud or too soft, I could have reduced it or increased it here. See, when you're doing this, maybe a couple of dB up and down is fine. But if you have to do more than that, then there's something wrong with the recording. If you have to, like, if the recording is too soft and you have to increase like some 15 dB, means the recording is done badly. Okay, so you might have to go and re-record that. So if you have spoiled the recording, there's nothing you can do in post production. But if it's like a couple of dB off, it's fine. Maybe up to 3 to 6 dB, you can go up and down. More than that, then you should really check the quality of your recording. Okay, let's get back to the presentation. uh, Again, if you're doing voiceovers, if you're doing ad films, you check for lip sync. The last thing you want to know is, something is out of sync. Now, why? Okay, the video guys will always check it, but sometimes if they miss out on something, you need to make sure you catch it. So you, while giving a file only, you make sure that your audio is relatively in sync with whatever video they've given you. Later on, if they change the timing of the video, that's not a problem, but whenever you're giving stuff to them, you make sure that you have the best sync possible. Okay, it is just to make sure that, to show that you do good quality work. Again, when you're doing any sort of mixing, I highly recommend to color code your tracks. Like, I have a color coding. I color all my drum tracks red, all my bass blue, and then my guitars green. It just helps with, if you, in a large mix session, if you want to go and do something the drums, it's, instead of looking for the drums on the screen, I can quickly go to anything that is red, and I'm for sure, okay, I'm in the region where the drums are. Okay, so color coding really helps. Okay, that is to do with editing. Last, when it comes to, now, the one of the last things you'll do is mixing. Now, I'm not going to get into mixing in very large detail, because mixing is a huge topic and it's very creative, but there are certain things that you need to keep in mind when you're mixing. Before you start mixing, make sure everything is in the right order. Okay, because, like, when I do a mix, I like to have all my drums first, my bass second, guitars third, and then vocals later on. If you have some sort of a protocol that way, try and follow that, so that you spend less time looking for the track you want to adjust. Right, if mentally you have a map of what track is placed where on your screen, it'll be easier for you to find it. So if you're working with large sessions, you try and make sure that, you have a particular place for all your tracks, and try and repeat that same thing again and again. That's the reason why coming back, making templates is a good idea. Okay, always mix through a master fader. Keep a master fader and mix through it. If you want, on your master fader, you can insert some sort of a metering plugin, and check at every stage of the mix, check where is your peak and where is your average level. Most of the mastering engineers will ask you to kind of peak at -6. Okay, because that gives them at least another few dB of headroom. Okay, it gives them some dB of headroom to limit the mix later on. So if you're mixing any kind of music, try and make sure that, you're peaking somewhere around -6. Do not go into the red, because if you're mixing very loud, your mastering engineer will not have any room to kind of master and get the volume up higher. Okay,
So the
so
average level should be at -6, or the
no,
peak.
the peak. That is, see, depends. You talk to your mastering engineer. If you have a mastering engineer who usually masters the track, you talk to him. He will tell you generally. Some mastering engineers have preferences. Like the guys I talk to, they always tell me to, kind of peak at somewhere on -6. And trust me, it is possible. If you do the right gain staging, it is
Yes,
possible.
yes, yes.
Okay, so if at all you think that your master is getting too loud and is speaking, that means there is a wrong gain staging done in your plugins, in your gain structure. So your gain staging becomes one of the most important thing. If you have to spend time research about gain staging, see how the professionals do their gain staging. That is very important. Once you have a gain stage right, everything will fall in place. Even if you're a very less than average mixing engineer, you'll still yield very good results with good gain staging. Okay, so gain staging doesn't mean only the gain on your preamp. It means all the gains from one plugin to another, like the output levels. Especially when you're using compressors, don't simply go and outgain compressor ka makeup gain bada diya 10 dB because it sounds loud. Don't do that. There's a way of compressing. You make sure that you research how to compress and then use the compressor. Okay, so that gets me to the point of mixing volumes. Don't mix too loud, because if you start mixing too loud, you start losing perspective. If you start losing perspective, you're not going to make right informed decisions. You make sure that you mix at good levels which you're comfortable at. I have i have seen mixing engineers pumping their monitors, and they're mixing there for like hours on end. What is going to happen is, when your ears are going to start getting fatigued, you're going to start getting mentally tired, and you're not going to take the right decisions. So when you mix at average levels that are comfortable, you're going to have a very more relaxed mixing experience. Okay, if you're using compression and limiting, don't overdo it. you know don't do it to a point. Compressors are very easy to be abused, because they have an output gain. People just put a compressor on, increase the output gain, and voila, you have loud mixes. But that does not mean your mix is good. Okay, if you do not know how to compress, research about compression and then use the compressor. Okay, while mixing, make sure that you take enough breaks, Give yourself like every half an hour, 45 minutes, give yourself 5 minutes, 7 minutes, go out, change your atmosphere and come back. That will really refresh your perspective when you're mixing. Okay. And last thing is learn to stop over mixing. What happens is we are making a track. If you're a producer and you make a track and you feel okay, fine, the track is done, then the next day will come, nahi yaar, I'm not good enough, I want to make it better and better and better. The thing is that perfect mix does not exist. Okay. If I do a mix today, if I come to that mix 3 years later, I'm going to find some problems in that mix. That is inherent with all humans. So you learn to say, okay, this is it, this is the best I can do, and stop. If you have done a mistake, it's fine, you can rectify it in the next mix that you do. Okay. As a mixing engineer, as a recording engineer, as a vocalist, guitarist, as an artist, you're always going to keep evolving. So no, do not limit yourself, because if you try to overmix, you'll be working on that one song for 1 year, you'll never be able to work on any more music. So understand what is your limit and try and stop there. Release a track. If you once releasing it, you figure out, okay, you know what, I could have done that better, I could have done this compression better, I could have used a better reverb. Use that experience in the next song. Okay. So don't stick to one song and keep mixing it, for a year or 2 years. You'll never end up releasing that song. And I've had this kind of experience. You'll never end up releasing the song. It's just going to lie on your hard drive, and then it's just going to play on your mind. So do the best you can, release it, and whatever you feel is the problem, rectify it in the next song. Okay. You might be even a guitar player. Sometimes guitar players, they play a solo and they'll not be happy with it, and they'll keep playing it, playing it, playing it, playing it. Over time, then you get saturated with it, and then you start becoming worse than what you were. So once you feel, okay, this is the best I can do, go ahead, it's okay. Clear? After the mixing stage is the mastering stage. So mastering, I'm not going to go deep into it, but the thing is, if at all you have to master your own tracks, just get yourself a reliable loudness meter. Okay. I think there's a meter called Ulean meter, which is a free version, and uh, it is a small kind of a app that you can install on your computer, and you can use it as a plugin on your DAW. If you are mastering for any streaming site, for example, YouTube, Facebook, or sorry, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, you go onto their site, see at what level they want the masters. Usually, it's about minus 14 LUFS. Okay, and then master with that in mind. Okay, mastering is not about making things loud. Okay, that's a misconception. It's about giving a final touches to your audio. It's about making sure that the dynamics are not more than what you require. It's, if you're doing an album, to making sure that all the levels of all the mixes are relatively the same. Okay, so all that you take care of during mastering. If at all you have to master your own mix, do not finish a mix and after half an hour start mastering it. Give yourself time, because while mixing you lose some of your creative juices. So once you finish mixing, you're happy with the mix, give it time, give it 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, maybe a week, and come back and master it after then, because by then your perspective will change. By then you have maybe mixed some other songs and you're completely refreshed again. Then you can start mastering it. So I always usually give it 1 week. So once I finish a track, and after, if I have to master the track, I'll come back after 5 days to a week and then master it. I won't master it right away. Okay. When you're mastering, look at the bigger picture, concentrate on the tonality of the entire master, not how loud it is. Okay. Concentrate, if you feel that the low end is a little too much, if the high end is a little too much, whether you're getting a very good whether your stereo spread is good enough, if your low end is smudging all over the place, or you need to kind of get your low end a little more mono. Think in those terms. While you're mastering, your entire mindset has to be on those two tracks only, and not think about the mix. Yeah, if you go to master and you feel that your snare drum is bad and you try to fix the snare drum in the master, that's not the right way of mastering. If you feel your snare drum has gone bad, you have to go back to the mix and fix it in the mix. You can't do anything in the master. Okay, once you finish mastering, just make sure you take your track, go check it in the car, go check it in your, if you have a home theater system, check it on headphones, check it on earphones, make an MP3 and check it to see if the degradation is any noticeable. So do these few things, and once finally if you're done, it's okay. If it sounds relatively the same everywhere, you're ready with your product. Okay. The last thing we'll talk about is how do you deliver your files. Now, the context here is, if you have mixed your files, how do you deliver it to the mastering engineer? If you have mixed audio for an ad or a VO, how do you deliver it to your client? First thing first is, when you are exporting your session, okay, may it be your one audio track of vocals, or may it be an entire mix down, you listen to it from top to end. Make sure that there is no pops, no clicks, no words that are gone missing, no words that are cut out, because it happens many times if you're doing, say, an audiobook. Okay, audiobooks are what? They are books. So, each chapter might be 15 minutes long. So you might get bored of it, and while editing, you might by mistake cut off some word half somewhere, and you have not realized it. So while you're delivering the file, take half an hour out and listen to it line by line or paragraph by paragraph, and make sure that you have everything in place. Okay, if there are breath sounds and stuff, and you notice after doing the entire mix, you notice one of the breath sounds a little too much, go to the mix back again, then go maybe cut those clips or use a DSR and get those out. Because when you're giving your product to the client, finally it has to be perfect, especially if you're giving it for some commercial use. You do not want a client to come back saying, hey, listen, yaar, ye sentence mein ye page pe ye word आधा कट गया है. That is bad reputation for you, you know. So always listen to your file from top to bottom. Give it time. It is, I know, especially if you're doing something like a voiceover or a audiobook and all, it is very irritating. But if you want, take a break, come back and listen to it, and then make sure everything is in place before you deliver it. If you're delivering music or any sort of audio for video, consult with the client ki what is the resolution and how do you want to deliver the file, whether you want it 44.1, whether you want 48, or whether you want both, whether you want an mp3 as well. And then once they give you the specifications, you deliver it in that specification. When you're emailing them, do not just put all the files in an email. Make a proper folder, name it, you know name each and every file. If it is a 48 sample, just name the file, make 48, write there 48 samples, write 41, 44.1, write it's an mp3, and then put it all neatly in one folder and zip that folder and email that folder. Do not just send random emails. Does not look good professionally. It does not look professional. Okay, make sure that you name your files correctly. Like, I have a protocol. Okay, when I'm sending a mix to a client and I want his uh, review over it, I'll always give it a number. Like, I'll mix it review one, so I'll put r_1, so I know it is a review one. Maybe in the third review they feel, you know what, in review one I like the way the snare sounded, why don't you try and do the same review one, the snare that you did in review one. Then it's easy for me to go and listen to the review one and replicate the snare sound there. So if you're sending your mixes for listening and taking reviews from clients, just name that mix and give it a unique name, so that you don't get confused later on. And once you're done with everything, if it's a final, make sure it is named final, so that you don't get confused with the other bounces, with the other exports. If you have multiple files to be given to the same client, say you're doing a voiceover and they have, like, an ad for 1 minute, then the same ad for 30 seconds, same ad for 15 seconds, you make sure all those exports are put in the same folder, and you name, okay, so and so ad 1 minute, xyz ad 15 seconds, xyz ad 30 seconds. Name it, put it in a folder, and then send that folder to them. Okay, do not just send random things anyway. It has to be neat and legible for everybody, because people will waste time others trying to figure out what is what. You don't want that to happen. Once your project is done, you keep an archive of the project in your hard drive for some time. You can keep it for 6 months, for 3 months. Usually any professional studio will keep that project for at least 3 months. After the 3 months, they'll delete it. Okay, so you tell your clients, listen, after the project is done, I will save it in my computer for maybe 3 months or 6 months, whatever you decide. And tell them, if you want to take the project file from me, you take it. If you want to charge extra for it and stuff, that is up to you. But they should be able to come a month later and say, listen, we want a project file. ऐसा नहीं कि project हो गया और आपने वो delete कर दिया. Okay, keep it for some time and just make sure that all the work there is done, and then you delete the file. If the client wants a session file and stuff, give it to them. If you have to charge extra for it and all, that's your call. But if the client asks for the file, you give it to them. Okay, make it clear to the client that after a certain amount of time I'll be deleting the files, because it has happened so many times that friends of mine have gone to studios, recorded stuff, and then after 1 year they decide that I want a session file, and then they realize the studio has deleted the file. So you tell your client, hey, listen, session is over. If you want to take the file right now, because I'll be keeping it for a maximum of 3 months, after which I will be deleting my files. Make it clear to them, so that they know that if they want to collect the session file, within 3 months have to come and collect it. Okay. So rounding everything up, this is what I think would be an ideal way of working in a home studio. Now, these are some techniques that I've taken from professional studios and gotten into the home studio. The filing, the delivery system is all what professionals do. But you try and adopt those techniques to even work from your home studio. So no matter what gear you're working with, at what level you're working with, it all what matters is what product you give out. Okay, your product, what it should sound good, it should meet all the specifications of what the client wants, and it should be, you should be easy to work with for the client. So that's when life becomes much more easy, and especially in a time where like a pandemic is happening, you cannot go personally to any studio, you cannot go personally meet your clients, everything is going to happen online. So the more streamlined you make your workflow, the better it's going to be. Okay, so this gets us to the end of the session. If you want any, if you have any doubts, you can ask us. And if you like, for guys who want us to even check your mixes, if you have some mixes that you want us to check, you can email us on our CMedu email addresses. I'm going to type in my email address. So in case you guys want to email us your mixes and want us to just check and give you a review, we can do that for you. uh, so this is my email address. If you want us to check your mixes, if you have any doubts regarding audio, you can anytime send us an email, and we'll be happy to reply to you and clear your doubts on it. Okay. Okay, some questions here. In your experience, Dushtu? Okay, regarding work, see, it depends upon, depends upon what the client want. Now we can't really I can't tell you that clients will only want to go to a home studio or want to go to a big studio. For example, if I want to record drums, I'll go to a bigger studio to record drums. But if I want to record the bass guitar, electric guitar and stuff, I usually do it at my home studio. But nowadays most of the musicians have their own studio setup, so they record stuff and send it to me. But it's up to you, up to your budget, up to the client's budget. If you have, say, if you're a voiceover artist, it'll be easier for you to make your home setup and record there, rather than going to a studio every time you have to record a voiceover. If you're a singer, if you're a session singer who's who sings for ads and stuff, then having a home studio setup will help you a lot. Okay, if you're a mixing engineer, then having a home studio setup, you'll have to go and meet other musicians, other clients, and get work to yourself. So it depends upon the budget, who goes where. So I hope that answers the question. Another question: how do you know that the volume of one mix is right, as we have different stages where volume can be controlled? It feels highly subjective, but there's a standard. It is not subjective. I mean, see, when it comes to volume, we are not talking about volume from the speaker. We are talking about volume leaving our DAW and getting into the print. So that's where I'm telling that peaking at -6 for a mix is some way not a standard, but it's a safe place to be. You know, so try to make sure that you're peaking at -6. So uh, you cannot measure. I mean, it's very difficult to measure by hearing. So you have to have some sort of metering system to uh, check your levels. Okay, so make sure that you're not hitting the red. Uh, Peaking at about -6 is a safe place to be. Okay, see, as you mix more and more, you'll get that experience. Okay, so yeah, so just try to make sure that you're not peaking, at least if I mean, that's the thing that you need to be far away from. If you want us to check your mixes, just maybe send a wave file, preferably, and we can maybe have a listen to it. If you have any other doubts regarding this, or regarding your home setup, or regarding audio in general, you can just email us, and one of us will get back to you on that. This was, I try to simplify as much as possible, but if still you have not understood certain things, you can always email us, and we'll be happy to rectify any problems that you have. Any other doubts that you want me to answer? Anything that you want me to, I mean, something that you have not understood from the presentation, or something that you have worked on and not understood, and you want to ask some questions about that, you can ask now. Often run stereo problem. No, I think I don't run into problems with stereo spectrum, because see, at my place I have a pair of monitors and I have a pair of headphones. So I'm pretty sure of my stereo spectrum. So I don't generally run into this problems. See, the thing is, what mistakes people do while mixing is they'll take everything and they'll pan it hard left, hard right. They'll record acoustic guitars. They'll record two acoustic guitars, one acoustic guitar left, one acoustic guitar right. Then they'll record two electric guitars, same left and right. So don't pan everything hard left and hard right, then what's going to happen? All the audio is going to be on the left and on the right, and only vocals are going to be in the center. So you have a stereo spectrum, use it. Try to use every space in the stereo spectrum, and if you do that, you won't run into problems with stereo imaging. And yes, if you're using stereo images, remember, don't overuse them. They will put your audio out of phase. हल्का सा करना ठीक है, ज़्यादा मत करो स्टीरियो इमेजिंग, नहीं तो खराब हो जाएगा आपका ऑडियो. All of a sudden you'll feel that your low end is gone. So stereo images, just use them carefully. Anything else that you guys want to know? Mohit, I'm done with my stuff. We can wait for some doubts, and if not, then
Yes.
we are done.
Yeah. So, guys, whoever is present, do you have any doubts, any queries, questions? Please feel free to ask us. Cool. I guess we don't
Cool.
have any
Sorry.
queries. So,
ठीक है.
would like to stop here. Thank you, Johnston, for
No problem.
such a
You're
lovely
welcome.
session. For
Yeah.
And I hope everyone here has like got some really cool tricks and tips from you about how to manage things at their home studio. Uh, Lovely session altogether. Thank you. We would
Thank you
like
so
to
much.
end
Thank you,
here.
guys.
And you have our email IDs. Please get in touch if you have anything to share, your mixes or anything. And we'll be coming up with some interesting workshops every Saturday for all of you guys. So stay tuned.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.